giant orange records. My dog is so funny. You know, record collecting can be a really, really strange thing. There have been times where I've gone months, 6 months, 3 months, maybe a year without finding a record, and maybe I wasn't looking as hard as I am now. Maybe it had something to do with where I lived. But then there's times where you get hit with wave after awesome wave of music, and it just keeps coming your way. And that, my friends, is what happened to me this September 2023. I just got bombarded with finding awesome records, a few of them online, but mostly from my local music store right here, Sounds Good Music. Let's start off with finding Os Mutantes debut albums. That translates to the Mutants, by the way. They're an incredible band, Brazilian 60s psychedelic rock. It's really out there, really great, and man, Brazilians and South Americans really take their music seriously. I think you could classify this as Tropicalia, which is its own interesting little genre. And I got to see this band in February 2023 in Jacksonville at Winterland 5, this free music festival. And my son and my dad were there with me too, and they both really enjoyed this band. This is obviously a reissue, and it also comes with a CD. Great sounding record. I really dig this repress. It says Digilog, meaning digital and analog. The LP is analog, the CD is digital. Boy, I've been spinning this a lot, and I kind of feel like the record store ordered this just because I'd mentioned it, which is all good. And then that takes me to the next one. This is an album that just came out this month in September 2023. I know it's October now, but we're barely into the new month. The Garment District, Flowers Telegraphed to All Parts of the World. With a title like that, you know it's going to pique my appeal. I found this through Psychedelic Baby magazine. Actually, it's called It's Psychedelic Baby magazine. I was just browsing on their page and thought, you know, that looks pretty cool. I checked it out and immediately fell in love with this. I ordered this on like a Thursday. It arrived from Athens, Georgia on a Saturday. They even wrote a personalized thank you note, which is really, really cool. This is sort of like, I don't know, these two sisters out of Pittsburgh, I believe, or they're related somehow. It's really cool players on this record. It's very kind of psychedelic. It's poppy. There's a lot of synthesizers and fuzz guitars. And I can't wait to spin this. I haven't played it yet because I just got it, but I did listen to it online. And it's one of those where I just immediately ordered that, and I almost never do that without listening to it for a while first. And this came from Happy Birthday to Me Records. They're a label, I believe, out of Athens, Georgia, doing some really, really cool stuff. I've been looking for this record for such a long time. I've heard about it. They dropped it at my local record store, and I've become pretty good friends with those guys. Been friends with one of the guys for a while. This is a Beatles mono Revolver on Parlophone. If you remember my Revolver video from a few weeks ago, this is the one that I've been hunting down, so I'm probably going to get rid of most of my other copies now. I mean, look at that beautiful Parlophone mono. UK, so stoked to finally have found this, and it was a very, very reasonable price compared to what you might see on Discogs. It's far, far below the average Discogs prices, and that's what's great about going to your local store and supporting your brick and mortar independent record stores. I'm really all for that. And they not only had Revolver mono, they had Help in mono on Parlophone. This is a first press. Love this album. You get to hear them expand their sound a little bit. And, you know, just to make it a bit of a trifecta, why have one when you can have three? They also had Please Please Me. It's an early UK mono parlophone pressing. Sounds incredible. The thing about these three records is they're very, very quiet. I had to turn the volume up quite a few notches on the old Kenwood Hi-Fi there. Another interesting one, I listened to this earlier today, and it's been a long time since I listened to this. It's really, really good. My friend at the record store said he likes it better than Pet Sounds. I wouldn't quite go there, but a mono Beach Boys Smiley Smile. This was one of their first, perhaps, of 2 or 3 records where they recorded it mostly at home, mostly in Brian Wilson's house, and it definitely has a lo-fi sound, all except for Good Vibrations, which, took 6 months and 3 studios and some ridiculous amount of money to record. But you know what? It kicks off side 2, and it blends right in. It sounds like it's meant to be there, but I mean, they almost sound like they're goofing off with a lot of this, and we all probably know the story of how the Smile album was abandoned, but this is a good album. There's a lot of things on this album that were probably going to be on Smile, which was eventually released in the 2000s. And I'll say that once upon a time I played in a band that sounded a lot like the Beach Boys, and I kind of got sick of the Beach Boys due to overexposure. On a lot of road trips, we'd listen to every Beach Boys album, every outtake upon outtake, and unreleased tracks, and all this. And it got to the point where one of the guys in the band commented that, oh boy, we're going to listen to another bootleg of Al Jardine going to buy socks. It's really going to tell us a lot about the band. But anyway, that's way, way in the past now, and I've sort of renewed my appreciation for the Beach Boys, because they definitely made some fantastic music. And again, this is like lo-fi home recording. It's, it's not quite garage rock or anything, but it might have some of those elements, or maybe about as close as the Beach Boys ever got, because this is sort of like, the producers went bye-bye, and it's like your parents aren't there and you got your house to yourself for the weekend. Let's record an album without insane production. Another one I thought I'd never find that also popped up at the local record store was Spacemen 3. I'd been looking for their records for a long time. This band features Sonic Boom and Jason Pierce. Sonic Boom went on to have a solo career, and he produced some groups like MGMT. And Jason Pierce went on to form a band called Spiritualized, who you may have heard of. These were, Spacemen 3 was sort of a British 80s band, very minimalist, very psychedelic, kind of trippy, crazy fuzzy sounds, very repetitive, but that repetition creates sort of like a trance-like state after a while, and it's a very interesting take on psychedelic music. If you're a fan of the Velvet Underground, you'll probably like this. I learned about these guys through the Clientele, mentioning them in several interviews, and the Clientele even covered one of their songs called I Believe It on the B-side of Since Kay Got Over Me. The Perfect Prescription, this is very tripped out, kind of crazy music. It sort of goes between very accessible and very out there. Another one I've been looking for so long, one of those elusive psychedelic records. This is a band called Tomorrow, and their self-titled debut. This is I believe, an early American press, but it's really hard to tell. This is the label. There's not a lot of information on this one online. I usually try to get some information from Discogs, but it's got a little hole punch here in the bottom. But what a fantastic psychedelic record. It's sort of in the vein of Beatles revolver-ish stuff, but a little bit crazier. Their song My White Bicycle kicks off the album. There's some really, really good stuff on here. Colonel Brown, Real Life Permanent Dream is a fun one. There's some cool, like, sitar-ish sounds on there. Shy Boy is another cool little poppy organ-driven song. Revolution's cool. And this one has a bonus track that wasn't on the original UK version called Excerpt from a Teenage Opera, which is sort of like a rock opera type of thing. I believe this album came out in 68, although it was recorded in 67. The record company didn't really care about this album. And this was supposed to be like colorful sunshine stuff. And the record company said they had to put it out in black and white to save money. But somehow Tomorrow is written colorfully. I guess they managed to slip that one by on them. They do a cool cover of Strawberry Fields. It's almost like, I would say it's like a proto-metal version. You know, think like maybe if the Stooges covered Strawberry Fields, something like that. And there's another song called Hallucinations, which closes off the record. Really, really fun stuff. Very, very English, but very top-notch English hard psych. This is a crazy one. The Black Angels out of Austin, Texas. Very psychedelic rock group. This one is called Phosphene Dream. So far, it's my favorite album of theirs that I've latched onto. I haven't listened to these guys in quite a long time and recently got back into them after, say, a 10-year hiatus. Their studio albums are very, very good, including this one, which, I mean, this record is as thick as a dinner plate. And these guys are still around, still kicking at it. I would really like to go see them at some point. But until then, I'll enjoy this one. It's very like thick, layered, lots of fuzz guitar, tons of reverb. Good stuff. Here's a Pretty Things compilation from the 1970s. The Pretty Things were a 60s rock band. I think they probably went through all the Spinal Tap formations of, you know, Give Me Some Money to the Flower People to sort of the harder rock stuff. But, you know, these guys ain't no joke, man. They really had some great stuff. Midnight to Six Man is one of my favorite songs. Don't Bring Me Down, Roadrunner, Rosalind. This compilation was put together by a guy named Greg Shaw. Look him up. And, you know, several bands have cited the Pretty Things as being very influential on them. Of course, it's on Sire Records, the cool punk rock label from the 70s. Wow, this isn't the Mel Brown album that I've always been looking for. That one's called Chicken Fat. This one is called Mel Brown's Fifth. Very groovy, soulful, gritty, instrumental kind of rock. I mean, there is a little bit of vocal on it. But, you know, it's 198 proof, distilled from soul, straight Mississippi special. This stuff is at least 6 weeks old, packaged and handled by Mel Brown, who's given the peace sign on the cover. It's on Impulse label. Good, groovy, funky, fun stuff. I think it's early 70s or late 60s was when that one came out. Finally got a copy of the Guess Who's American Woman. The Guess Who is one of my absolute favorite bands of all time. And this is a classic album. It's got No Time, American Woman, and No Sugar Tonight. 3 of the Guess Who's best songs. You know, I really like the Guess Who's albums. They do get some filler stuff in there, but it's good filler. It's fun, and it rocks. And this was one that I don't know much about. They threw this one in the mix. This is Rhinocerous. Better Times Are Coming. Now, this was sort of a super group put together by Elektra record executives. And some of the members included Michael Fonfara, who had played keyboards with the Electric Flag, and in the 1970s he went on to play in Lou Reed's band, and then Lou Reed abruptly fired him, as Lou Reed tended to do. Here's another one, an unexpected one, that I don't know a whole lot about. It's Ebo Taylor, Life Stories. I believe this is a compilation of Afrobeat classics from 1973 to 1980. Similar to ZAMROCK, but not quite the same. Very groovy, rhythmic, soulful, awesomely fun music. Like, you could get up and dance to this. And I'm going to check this out a little further. I've only played one side of this double LP so far, but I got a good taste and I want some more. This is Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers' second album, You're Gonna Get It. The two big hits on here are Listen to Her Heart and I Need to Know, and the rest of the album tracks are very solid. The songs aren't quite as memorable as those two, but this is probably like one of their more hard rockin', almost punk, but like if Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were doing a little bit, you know, faster, angrier type music, this is the album. It's a very good one. It is on the Shelter label. We get this cool moon and Saturn ring on the label. And this is the Amboy Dukes first LP with Ted Nugent on lead guitar. And say what you want about Nugent, I don't agree with everything he's ever said, but I will say he is a smoking hot lead guitarist. That dude knows how to play. He even had his famous Gibson Birdland on this album, and they nickname Ted Nugent Ted the Duck Nugent. They call the guitar the Bird, B-Y-R-D, but it is his Gibson Birdland. And this album has quite a few covers on it. Their version of Baby Please Don't Go is on Nuggets, and it rocks pretty hard. They cover Cream's I Feel Free, and I believe most of the rest of these are originals. I'm going to have to give this one another listen, as I've never heard it all the way through, but definitely some good late 60s Detroit Rock City music. And here's one. Man, I heard about this one for a while. Never thought I'd see it. It's an album called Morning. The band is called Morning, and this one is from 1970. It's sort of like folky, progressive rock on the Vault label. It's pretty cool gatefold. And all the songs are fairly short, you know, they don't break the 2 or 3 minute mark all that often. One song's even 1 minute and 35 seconds. This is the really cool gatefold artwork. There's not a whole lot of information about this band. I guess there were about 6 guys in the group, and it is just one where, I don't know, it just captures that early 1970s rock sound in a way it's just good. You gotta check that one out. This is Spirit's debut album from 1968, The Family That Plays Together. It's the name of this one, with a Motel 6, $6 a night. I guess in 1968, Motel 6 was $6 a night. And this has their biggest hit and my personal favorite song of theirs, I Got a Line on You. The other songs are also very solid record. They kind of, you know, go in some like jazzy territory. It's pretty experimental, hardish rock for 1968, and these guys play together quite well. I'm gonna say that I only got this one for the cover, Roxy. Like, what an outrageous album cover this artwork is. This one is from, you guessed it, 1969, and I don't know, maybe some people don't like clowns. I don't mind them so much, but this album is a lot less goofy. It's sort of like a pop rock album with bits of psychedelic. It's a lot of guitar-driven stuff and slightly psychedelic. I spun one side. I'll finish the album at some point, but it was really more enjoyable than what I was expecting. Again, the band is called Roxy. And while we're speaking of Beatles monos, I think I actually found this one in August, not September, but who cares? Rubber Soul Mono. This is on the Odeon label, and this one was made in Lima, Peru. How it got to the United States, I have no idea, but I'm sure glad it did, because this thing is the reason why you listen to the Beatles in mono. It just, everything sounds way more up front. It's way crisper. It's way hotter than the stereo mixes. And the Beatles, as we all know, spent most of their time working with the mono mixes, as did their engineers. The stereo mixes were just an afterthought, at least, you know, in 1965 when this came out. So this is a record that I already had, but I traded my copy. I did a straight trade for a copy the record store had, and their copy is a little bit cleaner. This is the Left Banke album, Walk Away Renee / Pretty Ballerina from 1967. It's one of my absolute favorite albums. It kind of has a a garage rock feel, but these kids, they were teenagers and they were just super accomplished musicians. Some of those keyboard parts are particularly beautiful. It's like sort of on par with the stuff that the Beatles played or any session musicians, except these cats played it themselves. And of course we all know Walk Away, Pretty Ballerina. There's not a bad song on here. She May Call You Up Tonight, Bartenders and Their Wives, I Haven't Got the Nerve, Shadows Breaking Over Mind, I Can't Let Go of You Girl, Your Evening Gown, What Do You Know, and Lazy Day, which has some really cool fuzz to end the album. This is Big Mama Thornton, Stronger Than Dirt. I mean, look at this album cover. She's just sitting on a porch somewhere. Tells you she is stronger than dirt. Big Mama Thornton is the original version of You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog, which, Elvis kind of took it, changed it a little bit. But she actually redoes it on here, and it's like Hound Dog 69 or something. This is sort of like an electric, gritty electric black American blues rock from the late 60s on the Mercury label. Really glad that I found this. It is every bit as good as I thought it would be. Some incredible vocals, incredible performances, great guitar work. This is a real banger. I'm actually quite a fan of compilations. This is a really good one. Time Life Classic Rock 1965. I mean, you get all the oldies hits. I kind of remember riding around in my mom's car when I was a kid in Charlotte, North Carolina, and she always had the oldies station on, and they just played all these great songs that you just don't hear on the radio anymore. And I think that sort of may have laid the foundation for a lot of the music that I heard that made a big impression on me. And I thought, well, this is what rock music is, or pop music. So we get the Byrds, Mr. Tambourine Man, For Your Love, the Yardbirds, In the Midnight Hour, Wilson Pickett, Tracks of My Tears, Just a Little, You Lost That Lovin' Feelin', My Girl, Wooly Bully, Down in the Boondocks, Help Me Rhonda, Baby I'm Yours, Do You Believe in Magic, I Can't Help Myself by the Four Tops, Tired of Waiting by the Kinks, Hang On Sloopy, Heart Full of Soul, Shotgun, I Got You Babe, Liar Liar, Back in My Arms Again, This Diamond Ring, and A Lover's Concerto. Very, very good compilation. The West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band. What is this? Part 1? No, Volume 1. This was on FIFO Records. Now I know Sundays did a more expanded version, but it starts off with a cover of Something You Got, an old soul song. They do Louie Louie. They do You Really Got Me. They've got a song called Don't Let Anything Stand in Your Way. And we get early versions of I Won't Hurt You If You Want This Love of Mine. Insanity is another original, and as you may know, I am a pretty big fan of the West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band. This one isn't quite as good as their main 3 studio albums that everyone loves so much, but you kind of see how they started off. This very garage rock and very kind of lo-fi recording. The gist of it's there. They kept refining their sound. Here's another, I believe, California blues rock album, Tongue and Groove, featuring Lynn Hughes. It's like late 60s kind of West Coast American blues rock on the Fontana label. Very enjoyable. There's nothing spectacular, but it's not bad either. Glad I found this. And for some reason, I never had this record, the band's self-titled album. Now, I recently sold my copy of Music from Big Pink because the condition was sort of iffy. I also learned that I like this band album a little bit better than their debut, Big Pink, just because I feel like they refined their sound a little bit more. We got that funky green Capitol label from the late 60s. This is sort of a must-have in everyone's collection. Oh boy. Captain Beefheart Trout Mask Replica. It's a pretty controversial album, and everybody put your trout mask on when you listen to this one, because this stuff is out there. It was all rehearsed. Captain Beefheart made the band rehearsed this album for about 4 months. Maybe it was longer than that, but they went in the studio and recorded the album in about 4 hours, and it's a double LP. It's very, very intricate music. You really got to be in the mood for this. It's possibly one of the most experimental bits of music out there, and definitely worth checking out. When you get sick and tired of everything else, you can put this on and it will warp your mind even after many repeated listens. And then, man, we got some OCs. Gosh, I love this band. This one is called Mutilator, Defeated at Last. Glad to see these popping up in the local record store. I'm a big fan of John Dwyer and the OCs, especially this era. It's good stuff. I think this one's from 2015 or so. Very far out, fuzzy rock. Here's one that a friend at the record store recommended. I think they also play stuff when I walk in. I'm like, hey, what is that? That sounds good. Oh, it's this thing. You should buy it. This is, I believe, a German band called Supreme Psychedelic Underground Hell Preachers Incorporated. Not sure which is which, whether it's the name of the band or the album. But yeah, it's mostly instrumental, kind of psychedelic, fuzzy rock. We have to give this one a few more listens, but it is very enjoyable, and the multiple eyes on the album cover are very of the period. I think it's like 1969 or 70 or so. It's definitely an interesting one, and record collector grade stuff. And of course, there's this other OC's album, Putrifiers II. Been looking for this one for a while, and it actually says this is an EP on the back. Interesting. But, we get a dog dressed up in a suit, which is just hilarious. Then you take it out, and you get the full picture, and then same thing with the front. The face of the dog changes to red. Nobody really knows what happened to Putrifiers I. This band is so prolific. They put out so much music. It's hard to keep up with them, but I'm trying. And here's another one. This is, I believe, some type of reissue of Clear Light, which was a Canadian psychedelic pop rock band. Comes with this little insert here. But if you know, they have song titles like Shadows of Your Mind, You Don't Care, and Civilization Machine. It's gotta be good, right? It would have to be from the 60s with titles like that. And it is very good. Definitely glad to add this to the collection. It's very garage psych. Has a total of 8 songs, so they're getting to be a little bit longer. We get a couple 10-minute songs, couple 8-minute songs, couple 4-minute songs. And then this one, Happening Live, The Outsiders. It's an interesting live album. I believe it's one of those live in the studio albums where they just superimpose cheering on top of it, which is kind of corny, but, Time Won't Let Me sounds great. I mean, it's a fun little record, Here they're playing their instruments, and I'm a gear nerd too. I love trying to see what kind of Fender amps they were using. And what's really funny to me is on this album cover, they have 2 bass guitarists. This guy here is playing a Fender bass. This guy here is playing a Gibson bass. And this guy is playing the 6th string. And then here's another kind of bluesy rock one from Fever Tree called Creation. Love the album cover a little bit more than the music on this one. It's sort of, tough guy blues rock. All right, I just wanted to jump on here real quick and say I hadn't actually listened to Fever Tree's Creation album as thoroughly as I should have. And after giving it another spin, I'll say that it is a very groovy, psychedelic blues rock with some cool keyboards from 1969. These guys were actually from Houston, Texas, not from San Francisco. They had an earlier hit on a different album about a San Francisco girl. So that's the kind of thing that confuses people, even record nerds like me. This is the Pickneyville pressing of their 1969 album. creation. I believe it is their third LP, and I just love the Salvador Dali inspired artwork. And boy, I got into ZAMROCK this summer. I'd heard about it a few years ago during the pandemic and just never really followed up on it. One of my friends who's since moved to Germany sent me a video about it, and it was kind of cool. Then I kind of forgot about it because remember, like, there weren't too many record stores open in 2020. But this is the Ngozi family Day of Judgment. Sort of, I don't know, ZAMROCK was this movement that happened after the country of Zambia was liberated from sort of a oppressive dictatorship. They had freedom to go buy instruments, amps, put on concerts. They heard the Beatles and the British invasion, started their own bunch of groups. This one has a song on there called Hi Baby, which really, really love that one. But it's solid stuff. Really, really fun stuff. Good introduction to ZAMROCK, and I think that might be my next rabbit hole. It's sort of psychedelic and garage rock, and it's its own thing, though. Their accents are amazing. And of course, we lost Rodriguez, sadly, this year. I've been a huge fan of Cold Fact, and this guy, I never picked up his second album, Coming From Reality, because I had the CD, and some of my favorite songs were the bonus tracks on the CD, which are not included here, but again, I had to get this. The record store had it, and listening to it again, I think, you know, this album isn't nearly as good as his debut, Cold Fact, but I think the only reason for that is there's like 2 songs on here on side 2 that don't live up to the rest of the songs, but everything else here is great. There are definitely some classic songs on here, and you know, the final track is called Cause, as in shortened for Because. A very good one. Finally found a copy of the La La's debut album. For some reason, never got this one. I believe this is a reissue. They're a great California band who they're still around putting out new music. I think they have a new album out soon. And they just kind of capture that vintage 60s jangle, laid back, I don't know, West Coast American sound. It's very pop rock. Good stuff. And this summer I got on a big Judy Collins kick, and they had her best of. You know, Judy Collins was very influential singer-songwriter, and she was kind of big in Greenwich Village, New York, and that folk scene, even years before Bob Dylan made it up there. Like Both Sides Now was one of the best pop songs from the 1960s. And this is Sweet Emma from the Preservation Hall Jazz Band in New Orleans. That is something I wish I had been able to see in New Orleans, but I went there years ago with a girlfriend who just didn't want to wait in line because they don't take reservations. And as you can see, that fine lady is no longer my girlfriend. Not for that reason. I just love New Orleans jazz, and it's more like the traditional jazz, and this is just very fun. So those are all the records that I picked up